This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That is 1 Peter 1:3. Guys, I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I'm so thankful, as always, to our donors. Guys, if you're wondering how we can keep putting out content that is equipping men around the globe to push back darkness, it's because we have donors. We have guys just like you that are hopping in on a monthly basis. So they've gone to Undaunted.Life/donate. They are giving to us on a monthly basis so that we can continue our ministry and our work around the globe. And guys, if you have not left a review, please leave us a 5-star review. And don't keep this episode a secret. Make sure you share this with all your friends everywhere that you could possibly share it, because today we're not doing quick hitters. Again, if you've been listening and if you're caught up, this week is the week before election week. Okay, so we got all the election stuff going, and I've told you right from the beginning that I'm going to be giving equal time to both Kamala Harris and to Donald Trump. And here I am to give you the reasons, the ultimate list of reasons to vote for Donald Trump after I did so on Tuesday as well. Okay, so on Tuesday I did the Kamala Harris reasons to vote for her, and then today I'm doing Donald Trump. But guys, these are very easily shareable around with all the people in your life and things like that, so make sure that you get this content into other people's ears, because I've already heard since Tuesday that is one of the best and most cogent and complete lists of reasons to vote for Kamala Harris. So if you skipped over the last episode to get to this one, make sure you go back to listen to Tuesday's episode, Reasons to Vote for Kamala Harris. I think it'll be a very interesting listen to you. But before I get into the reasons to vote for Donald Trump, I think this is very, very important. I have heard that upwards of 42 million Christians are planning not to vote in this election cycle. Now, what that means is not only are they not going to be voting for the general election for president, but they will not be voting for the senators in the states that represent them, for House of Representatives and members in the states that represent them, and that also includes the local elections, right? So these are everyone from their local sheriff to their mayor to any of their state representatives. Over 40 million Christians in America are planning not to vote. So first of all, let me just say this. I totally get it. I really do. Because if you remember, a lot of you have been listening to the show for a long time. We're so thankful for you. Back in 2016, I decided to leave the top of my ballot blank. So I went to the ballot box and I voted for everything else, right? For state senator, for U.S. senator representing state of Oklahoma, for local election stuff. But I did not vote for president because I did not think that Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump met my basic standards of human decency and conservatism. I didn't think that either one of them, of course Hillary Clinton wouldn't, but I didn't believe Trump that he was actually going to govern conservatively. I thought he was trying to seem moderate, lifetime Democrat, trying to seem moderate so that he could win the election. I was just as shocked as everybody else that he won the election, but then I was even more decidedly shocked over the long length of time that over his 4 years, especially in the first 3 years of his administration, he was very conservative in the things that he did. Now, he spent way too much money. He did some things that I clearly am not a fan of and couldn't co-sign, but he really did a fantastic job in those first 3 years in terms of doing things in a conservative way. Obviously, the 3 Supreme Court justices that he got on to the Supreme Court, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which happened during the Biden administration, all those are very, very good things. Because he did such a good job and because I was so wrong in 2016, I decided to actively vote and support him in 2020, and I am doing so again in 2024. But for you Christians, I want to reiterate a few points from that sermon that I talked to Josh Howerton about last week. This is directly from his sermon because these are things that should echo in your brain as you're literally sitting there on your hands saying that you're not going to vote. First thing I would remind you of is that a vote is not a Valentine. Just because you are voting for a candidate, that does not mean you co-sign everything that they've ever said or done. It also doesn't mean that you co-sign everything they are pushing for right now. If you have a candidate in any office that's running where you agree with them 100%, might I suggest to you that you need to expand your personal philosophies and constitution just a little bit. Because I don't think I could find a single candidate on planet Earth that I would agree with on 100% of issues. So stop treating your vote as if it's a Valentine that you were granting to somebody. Also, he said the ballot box is not a mailbox. You're not sending a message if nobody is reading it. So I remember back in 2016, I said on the show at the time that I wanted to vote for Senator Lankford, who represents the state of Oklahoma, James Lankford, that I would have written his name in for president. And so that would have made me feel good 8 years ago, but it wouldn't have done a damn thing. It wouldn't have done anything. You know why? Because the only thing that matters on the night of the general election is who wins your state. That's it. So the ballot box is not a mailbox. And lastly, Jesus isn't on the ballot, so get over it. And I would add, not just get over it, but get over yourself. Because look, I get it. Jesus 2024, I get all that stuff, right? And maybe that lands with you or something like that, but Jesus is not on the ballot. And just because there are fallible sinners on the ballot doesn't mean that as Christians we can absolve ourselves or abdicate our responsibility to the process that we are in here in this country. So I want to read to you Matthew 5:13 through 16, because this will kind of set the tone for the rest of my commentary here, and then we'll get into the reasons to vote for Donald Trump. So starting in verse 13 of Matthew 5, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house." So let me be clear about this, guys. We cannot be a preservative, which is what salt is. Salt, preserves things and, extends the time before something decays. We can't be a preservative if we're left with nothing to preserve. And we can't be the light if there is nothing and no one to shine the light on. Because I don't like being hyperbolic about elections. Every time for the last, 12 years or so, every election was going to be the last election, right? If this person gets into office, it's the end of the country. If this person gets in the office, it's the end of the country. But the signs right now, if Kamala Harris wins, are so dire and point directly to the opposite of human flourishing that I think it is imperative for every Christian to vote in this election. And I'm not going to be squishy like some pastors and not give you a name. You have to vote for Donald Trump. Not because he is a Christian, because I don't believe that he is, and not because Republicans can save us, of course not. But what we see on the Republican side of the ticket versus the Democratic side of the ticket is a focus on human flourishing, okay? Because you might be tempted to clutch your pearls as a Christian and virtue signal by not voting for Trump or not voting at all. But guys, we do have a duty to vote for candidates that will put forth policies and laws that lead to human flourishing. It is not hyperbolic to say that if Kamala Harris gets into office, that World War III might be in the offing. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not prophesying that. But it certainly is more likely. We'll get into some of the reasons here in a second. And guys, I agree with what my buddy John Cooper has said many times, and I'll paraphrase, but neither the Republicans nor the Democrats can save us. And a lot of people have said that, to which I would say, duh. But as John Cooper said, the Democrats will get us to hell much faster than the Republicans will. And so you can simultaneously hold these two thoughts in tension. One being that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats nor the Libertarians nor any party in America can save us. Duh, right? Go back to the verse I said from the beginning from 1 Peter. But we have a responsibility to vote for candidates that will put human flourishing at the center point of their administration. The Kamala Harris and Tim Walz administration would literally do the opposite of that, regardless of what they're signaling. And the Trump administration would certainly do more of that. So with that in mind, let's carry that into my discussion here about the reasons, and this is the ultimate list of reasons to vote for Donald Trump, okay? So the first reason I would give you is whoever they is, did try to kill the guy twice, if not 3 times. The third, assassination attempt, we don't know if it was actually assassination attempt or not, but there were 2 separate assassination attempts. And here we are a week before the election. And if you think Donald Trump is completely safe until the election, I don't really know what to tell you. I think that they are literally gunning for this guy, which makes you have to think why. Why are there nefarious actors or potentially even deep state actors within this country that are wanting this guy to not get the reins of power again? There's something in that. And so that is a reason to vote for him, because it's like they clearly don't want him in there. And these are people that are not aligned with you and the things that you want to do. Another reason is that, and guys, I'm going to be going fairly quickly through all these because, again, I'm not going to go super into all this minutia and details because there's so much information and misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, all this kind of stuff. I just want to give you kind of a little bit of a quick hitters as it pertains to these reasons. So another reason would be he has an America First approach and agenda as it pertains to policy and legislation. Because I am not completely anti supporting other countries and people in other countries because I do want to see as much human flourishing as possible. But God is pro borders, God is pro sovereignty, God is pro nations. And when I see people in our nation, like people in Maui or people in the Carolinas right now or in Tennessee that are suffering because of natural disasters, and we're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to other countries around the globe for it to be used by corrupt politicians, not actually for their people, I don't like that. Because as an American, I want Americans to be whole before we start trying to support other countries. Because the reality is, guys, if you're supporting these other countries and you yourself fall or fold as a country, not only can you no longer support those countries, but you can't even support yourself. So it's kind of like when you're on an airplane. What do they tell you if you're sitting next to a child? Get your mask on first and then take care of the child next to you. Why do you do that? Because that seems counterintuitive. Because guess what? If you pass out in the process of getting the mask on your kid, neither one of you get your masks on. Okay, so get yours on as quickly as possible and then secure the child. Let's focus on America first, and then we can work on focusing on everybody else later. Another reason to vote for Donald Trump is his economic policies while he was in office during his first term led to prosperity. I don't think even the most liberal amongst us would be able to argue against that. And the Democrats' policies have led to an economic reality that is stagnation at best and ruinous for the country at worst. Now, I will say both parties have spent way too much money. The looming debt crisis that we have in this country will cripple and kill this country eventually. Will it be in my lifetime? Perhaps, maybe even probably, but certainly by your kids or your grandkids' lifetime, we are going to be absolutely crushed by our national debt. So neither party, neither candidate is going to do well on that. But you can't look at especially the first 3 years of the Trump administration and compare that to these 4 years of the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden administration and see them as anything even nearing comparable. Okay? We are much better off financially when Trump was in office than we are with the Democrats in office. Another reason to vote for Donald Trump, and this is one of the main reasons that a lot of people will be voting for him in this election cycle, that's illegal immigration. Obviously, and you can come up with a myriad of different reasons, the Democrats, for some reason, want the borders to be wide open. Not just the southern border, but also the northern border, where we're seeing a tremendous uptick in illegal aliens coming through. Republicans at least signal that they want the border to be closed. Now, when Trump says that he'll finish the wall, I tend to believe him. The wall doesn't completely stop illegal immigration, but it does stymie it considerably, right? That's why we've, for millennia, put walls around cities that we wanted to protect the citizens therein, right? But when Trump says that he'll deport millions of illegal aliens, I don't really believe him that much because the process and the optics of that would be horrific. But I do think that he will prioritize getting known criminals, known murderers, known rapists, known gang members that are not citizens of this country, terrorists and all that are not citizens of this country, the hell out of here. I certainly believe him when it comes to that. Because there are certain countries that are like, oh, we're not going to take these people back. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't get a vote. Like in Venezuela, they literally let out their insane asylums and their max security prisons. They literally let these people go and said, head north. And they did. And so people are like, oh, look at Venezuela. What a country. Like their crime rate is plummeted. Their murder rate is plummeted. Why is that? Because their murderers are here now. They're crazy people. They're sociopaths. They're in our country now. Their gang members are in our country now. So I do think that Donald Trump and ICE and the people under his administration will get these people the heck out of here. Okay. Another reason to vote for Donald Trump is when he was in office, and yes, this is anecdotal, our enemies around the world were pretty quiet. But under Biden and Harris, they came alive. So everyone was a little bit terrified when Donald Trump was in office because they didn't know what he was going to do. Ben Shapiro said this story a lot. I've repeated it here on the show, but when he was hanging out with Donald Trump privately, it's like, how did these conversations go with Vladimir Putin? And he said while he was in office that he told Putin that if he invades Ukraine, that he was going to bomb the out of him. You know what I mean? Going to completely bomb the crap out of Russia, right? And basically Vlad was like, no, you won't. And then Trump's response is, I might. And just having that 5% chance that Donald Trump was not bluffing was enough to keep Vladimir Putin and the Russians at bay. And so when Biden gets into office, isn't it so interesting that Putin didn't feel that way and he invades Ukraine? We've seen a lot of posturing from the Chinese, specifically as it pertains to Taiwan. We saw Hamas go through with a major terrorist attack of our ally, Israel. We've seen so many different things. We've seen the Houthis, this random bag of ragtag, stinky pirates that we could literally take care of in an afternoon, create problems with shipping that affects the United States economy and the individual consumer, all while Biden is in office. And it's because no one takes him seriously. They see him as a paper tiger, or not even a paper tiger. He's a paper puppy at this point. And so when Donald Trump was in office, these people basically were minding their P's and Q's. So I think that's a good reason to vote for him. Another reason, this is related to the previous one, is militarily speaking, Trump seems more focused on making sure that our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are really good at killing people and breaking stuff, as opposed to Harris and Biden, who seem to be way more focused on making sure that more Latinx, Two-Spirit trannies are able to get into the military. Because this is all we've seen wall to wall for the last 4 years is we clearly have a problem with recruitment. There isn't a single group, I think, other than the United States Marines that are hitting their recruitment numbers. Because a lot of the recruitment stuff is not attracting young, virile guys that are very patriotic, that want to go and fight for this country and protect this nation from enemies, foreign and domestic. We don't really see that. But we're seeing commercials about, hey, I'm a young woman and I have 2 mommies and maybe the military could be for me. Or, hey, I've never really thought about serving my country at all, but here's a commercial showing me that actually the country can serve me. So I will selfishly join the military so that I can be served in some way. But when Trump was in office, not only did the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines seem to love the commander-in-chief, but again, there was a strength. There was a peace through strength approach with Donald Trump that says, if you push, we will push back way harder and you're not going to like it. With Biden, it's like, if you push, well, I'm going to signal that I don't like it, but I'm not going to do a damn thing. All right, another reason to vote for Donald Trump is judicial appointments. So this is not just the Supreme Court of the United States, but this clearly does include the Supreme Court of the United States. So as it pertains to the Supreme Court, 2 of the most conservative justices are Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Clarence Thomas is 76, Samuel Alito is 74. Neither one of them has signaled that they want to retire within the next 4 years, but let's say they do. Let's say, God forbid, one of those guys gets sick and is kind of forced into retirement because of their condition. Do you want Kamala Harris appointing those justices to the bench, to the Supreme Court, or do you want Donald Trump doing that? Because if anything, Donald Trump has signaled that he will put even more conservative people than he already did, because Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, they're not perfect, but they are more conservative. But they have made some very odd decisions that I would say so far. So they're maybe not as conservative as I would like. He signaled that he would put someone on that's even more conservative. I don't think we'll lose, what is that? Kagan, Breyer, one more. Sotomayor. I think those are the other 3. I don't think we're going to see either one of any of those 3 leave. But it's not just the Supreme Court. It is justices all over the United States, because that was one of the quiet things about the Trump administration, is the amount of judges and justices that he got put into all the different federal courts. Guys, this is how the country is molded, because the law is a teacher. And so if laws are passed and are able to be withheld or upheld rather, all the way up even to Supreme Court decisions, that will have an irrevocable change on our country and our culture. So that's very, very important. I definitely trust Donald Trump's judgment with judicial appointments way more than I would Kamala Harris. Another reason to vote for Donald Trump is it is very unlikely that he will make the same personnel mistakes that he made during the first administration. Obviously, his first administration was like a clown car. It was just, it was ridiculous. It was like a Chinese fire drill or just this revolving door of people. And some of the people that he had representing in his administration were terrible, like horrifically stupid people. And so I don't think he's going to make those same mistakes. He's even come out and admitted that he allowed a lot of other people to say, oh, yeah, keep these people in office and bring these other people in. And, when you're the president, you have a whole lot of decisions to make. And so you offload and offboard some of those decisions to other people. And he says, not going to do that again. Certainly not going to happen. And with that, I think it is very likely that Trump will actually drain parts of the swamp that can be drained during his second administration. That was one of the things that I was excited about in 2020 at the possibility of a second administration, because now there's really nothing. I say nothing. They tried to impeach the guy twice. There's now nothing that they can do to get you out of office. And so you might as well go for broke, swing for the fences here, right? Like, what do you got to lose? And so I do think that he learned a lot from last time, because he basically didn't get the last year of his administration because of COVID. But because of COVID, we saw a lot of the rot that was coming from the inside of the beast that is Washington, D.C. I don't think he'll make the same mistakes as it pertains to personnel. Another reason to vote for Donald Trump is the health initiatives that he is signaling that RFK Jr. will help with in terms of this administration. You see him then talk about Make America Healthy Again, those types of things. Obviously, there are major issues with things that are approved via the FDA process, with things that are in our food, with things that are in our water, with things that are in our cosmetic products. And I think that those are fantastic things that he would allow RFK and others to take care of. Also, a reason to vote for him is the inclusion of people like Elon Musk in his administration. Now, I know it's like, Elon will have an official capacity within the federal government. Do you actually see that happening? This guy's running SpaceX and, running Twitter and running like all these other companies. Like, do you honestly think he's going to have time to work for the federal government? Possibly. Wouldn't that be something? Like, he goes into Twitter, it fires like 80% of the employees, and Twitter has been better than it ever has been, and it runs essentially the same, if not better. Could he do that within parts of the federal government? Maybe, but he's at least signaling that he wants people like that in-house. Another reason to vote for him, these last three I'll just go quickly through. In general, he is for less regulation, not more regulation. And so being an entrepreneur, being a pro-business guy, a capitalist, obviously the more regulation you have, the less you have to flex your capitalist muscles. And so I think the fact that for every one regulation that was added, 3 or 4 were dropped in his previous administration, that is a good thing. Another reason to vote for him is he wants to get the United States back to energy independence. We were a net exporter of oil and natural gas when he was president. A net exporter, which is great for America. We're not giving money to countries that, are tolerating us or potentially even hate us, but we are exporting energy around the globe. Trump wants to get us back there. I am fully pro that, especially here in Oklahoma, where oil and gas is king. And the last reason that I'll talk about explicitly in terms of reasons to vote for Donald Trump is because the collective we that is America was better off during the Trump administration than we have been during the Harris-Biden administration. Just think about that. When you were in those first, especially 3 years of the Trump administration, what were things like for you? Could you go to the gas station and not feel anxiety? Could you go to the grocery store and not have to put certain items back once you got to the checkout counter? Just the practical everyday life. Did you feel safer? Because I was reliably informed in 2016 in that election that Trump was going to get us into all kinds of wars. Even people in my family bought into the lies that the mainstream media was feeding them, that if Trump gets into office, he's going to get us into World War III. But did you not just feel safer overall? Did you not feel better overall during that time period? Again, people are like, but Kamala, she's Mamala, and I'd rather hang out with her, and whether she seems empathetic and like she will give me a hug. But is she going to provide a better country for us, or is she part of the administration that has ran us into the ground? Something to think about. Hey guys, real quick. Very early on in Undaunted.Life, I knew I wanted to partner with a meat delivery service, but I didn't know which one to do. So I tried out several different ones, and here's the thing that I found out about some of the most popular brands that you've heard of before. These are people that are sending you stuff that is produced here in the United States, but every single month you might be getting beef from a different farm. And so one month your box may be full of amazing beef, and the very, very next month you're going to get stuff that isn't up to snuff and stuff that you don't want to feed yourself or your family. And so I wanted to partner with a farm, with an operation, with a cattle producer that is giving you the same high quality beef every single month. And that's why I want you to use the official beef delivery partner of Undaunted.Life, Primal Beef. Primal Beef is a cattle operation owned and operated by Sean Glass. He's a retired Navy SEAL that partnered with Jocko Willink, yes, that Jocko Willink, to launch Primal Beef. So what makes Primal Beef different from the other beef delivery companies? It's a combo of the following. It's all American Black Angus cattle. The beef comes from one farm, and that's in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. The beef is all natural, no hormones ever, no antibiotics ever, no mRNA ever. After slaughter, the entire carcass is dry aged and then hand cut by artisan butchers and then flash frozen to ensure that it maintains tenderness, marbling, and flavor. And here's another cool thing. For every box sold, Primal Beef donates meat directly to a member of America's Special Operations Forces through the C4 Foundation. So you can take pride in knowing that your purchase will help put literal food on the table for America's finest warriors. Are you salivating yet? If not, it's probably because you're a communist. Don't be a communist and try Primal Beef out today by going to www.primalbeef.com. That's primalbeef.com. Use the promo code Kyle to get $25 off your first order. Again, that's primalbeef.com. Promo code Kyle, Kyle, to get $25 off your first order. All right, guys, now with this next section, I just want to remind you, because if you are on the fence and you're thinking, man, I really don't like Trump, Kamala, blah, blah, all these different things, I want to remind you of some of the things that Kamala Harris is on record saying that she wants to do. So don't take my word for it. Take her word for it, okay? And before we even get into this list, I want to remind you of something. Before it was scrubbed from the internet and memory hold, she was ranked as the #1 most liberal United States senator, even over Bernie Sanders. So if you think Bernie Sanders is a crazy loon bag communist, which he is, she was considered to be more liberal than him. And that was a title that she wore, proudly until she became the Democratic candidate for president and then needed to pretend to be more moderate. And guys, don't believe for a second that she is going to be moderate. This is what every single candidate does during the primaries. They go as far to the left or to the right as they feel like they need to get the nomination. And then when it comes to the general, they at least signal towards the middle. But if you believe that Kamala Harris would govern as a moderate, bless your little dumb heart if you believe that. So here are some of the things that Kamala Harris has signaled that she wants. She doesn't want the southern border to be secured. Okay? She is totally okay with allowing murderous criminals and terrorists into our country as long as these people, or as many of these people as possible, can be shipped to swing states where they will eventually be able to vote in national and local elections en masse, thus destroying the country from inside out. She doesn't think that illegal immigrants coming into our country should be treated as lawbreakers, even though the very act of them coming across our sovereign border is breaking the laws of our country. And with that, she wants to abolish immigration and customs enforcement. That's ICE, obviously, because this works into the previous two things that I've talked about. She is pro anti-American organizations like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Remember that she actively raised bail money for the rioters during George Floyd's summer, so don't forget that. She wants to end the Trump tax cuts, even though they have done amazing things, and I can speak from personal experience, for the private sector, families, and entrepreneurs. She is pro-gun confiscation, even though she calls it a gun buyback, which, again, guys, would potentially lead to a second civil war in this country. She wants Medicare for all, which would further bankrupt the country and destroy our healthcare system. But also, we would no longer be the leading healthcare innovator because there wouldn't be any money in it for the innovators. She wants to do even more student loan forgiveness, as they call it, which would further plunge this country into debt because there is no forgiveness. You're just moving that debt onto other people, which would then punish American taxpayers that chose not to rack up tons of debt to get a useless degree. She wants a ceasefire from Israel in their war against Hamas and now with Hezbollah, which would only incentivize more October 7th style attacks in the future. She supports a supposed or so-called two-state solution between Israel and Hamas, even though it is literally impossible to have a two-state solution when one of the states' express purpose for existence is to stop the existence of the opposite state. So Hamas literally wants Israel and all Jews to not exist. And more basically, Hamas is not a country. It's a terrorist organization. It's a terrorist organization that was voted into power, and then they just kept power. But if there was an election today in the areas that they are in control of, they would be reelected into a position of power. You can't have a two-state solution with that. She also wants to end fracking, which would thus further our dependence on foreign oil from many countries that either don't like us or just tolerate us, as I've said, as opposed to just going back to being a net exporter of oil and natural gas. And guys, the list could continue. The list could certainly continue with what she is on record as having said, okay? And go back to the list that I just ran through. If that was a little bit fast, just rewind, and listen to it again. But the biggest reason to vote for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris is that and listen, guys, listen in here. The Harris-Walz administration would be the most pro-baby murder administration in American history, and there would be no close second. Let me remind you of the current Democratic Party official platform as it pertains to abortion. It's abortion for any reason, at any point of pregnancy, without protections for infants born alive after botched abortions, and all of that paid for by American taxpayer dollars. Guys, they want that to be the law of the land across the entire country. Essentially, screw your backwards red state. Essentially, we're getting rid of federalism. Again, abortion for any reason, at any point of pregnancy, without protections for infants born alive after botched abortions, and paid for by taxpayer dollars. Don't believe me? You want to challenge the fact that I would even say that? Here's the thing, guys. Kamala Harris is on record, saying that she supports nuking the filibuster in the United States Senate in order to codify abortion rights into federal law. So if any of that was confusing, quick civics lesson for you guys. The filibuster is where a group of U.S. senators or even a single U.S. senator can exercise their right to unlimited debate on the floor of the Senate, okay? And if that happens, what that basically means is the business of the Senate cannot continue, because this person is just going to debate. They're filibustering in that exact moment, so the Senate business cannot continue. Now, in this scenario, the Senate Majority Leader can end the filibuster by filing a motion to invoke cloture, which currently requires 60 votes of the 100 senators to succeed. Now, cloture, that just means that the debate has to end. Like, okay, great, heard it. The debate has to end. There has to be a vote on the legislation now. That's what cloture is. So, in the United States Senate, there is rarely a 60-seat majority for either the Republicans or the Democrats. So, this is a check that our founders, and the filibuster has changed over time, but this is a check on any crazy legislation that would affect the entire country that is put forth by a singular party, okay? But by nuking the filibuster, a simple majority of 51 votes, so that's either 51 actual votes from senators, or in the event of a 50-50 tie, the vice president would cast the 51st vote on one side or the other. A simple majority of 51 votes would be all it would take to have cloture. And if Democrats could find a way to establish an almost certain and permanent majority in the United States Senate, more on that in a second, they could immediately ram through all of their hyper left-wing political agenda, just one by one by one. So I want to repeat something that I said during the quick hitter section on episode 666 from last week. If Kamala Harris is elected, and if she does nuke the filibuster, which she has said that she isn't a fan of, it will not stop at federal abortion law. You're a fool if you believe that she will do it for federal abortion law and for nothing else. Democrats will move to make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico states, officially states, the 51st and 52nd states in the United States, leading to 4 extra senators that will all be Democrats, which would lead to potentially a permanent Democratic control of the United States Senate. They will move to have term limits on Supreme Court justices, and they will make sure that there is a stipulation in there where they can bounce current justices that have served longer than that period, which would mean Thomas and Alito would be out. They would stack the Supreme Court, so they would stack it from 9 justices, and they would add way more justices, and then they would put all those justices in under a Democratic administration, thus leading to basically a permanent liberal bend on the Supreme Court. Federal election law and control, and so you're not going to have local election law and control anymore, so they're going to do federal election law. We will see way less in-person voting. We're going to see more problems with the elections, with ballot harvesting, with all kinds of things like that. We would see blanket amnesty for illegal immigrants and or allowing non-citizens to vote in all elections, which would essentially end any Republican chances in federal elections. And I added one that I didn't say last week. They would enshrine the so-called Equality Act. So basically anything that's even vaguely anti-LGBTQ, maybe at your kid's school or in the city that you live in, you're going to be able to be sued for those types of things, right? So if you object to a male playing on your daughter's volleyball team in high school or something like that, that's going to be problematic for you. You could be sued for that. You could potentially go to jail for trying to stop something like that. But here's the larger point, okay? If Kamala Harris is elected and the Democrats and her decide to nuke the filibuster, they will not stop at reinstating the tenets of Roe v. Wade. Okay? They won't just stop there with what they had. They will go way past that, way past it. Okay? Again, the Democrats' current party platform on abortion is abortion for any reason, at any point of pregnancy, without protections for infants born alive after botched abortions and paid for by taxpayer dollars. When Roe v. Wade was basically enacted, when it was still, in force here in this country, essentially the only states off the top of my head that I can remember that had laws like that were California, Illinois, and New York, and perhaps New Jersey. Okay? So a small handful of states. But if Democrats get their way, that will be the law of the land across the entire land. Can you imagine the literal bloodbath if they were able to get that power? Again, Christians, you don't feel any need to vote? Here's the thing. A lot of you Christians have taken the bait of allowing people to shame you for being a one-issue voter. Oh, you can't just be a one-issue voter. Yeah, if your one issue is tax policy, I would probably agree with that. If your one issue is foreign aid, I'd probably agree with you. But if that one issue is life, the most fundamental of all issues, if you really think about it, that's certainly big enough to be a one issue that is going to basically guide all your other decisions, because what you support as a politician, as it pertains to image bearers of God, tells me just about everything I need to know about you. Because if you are okay with the Democratic Party platform, I'm going to keep repeating it because I want you guys to internalize it. Abortion for any reason, at any point of pregnancy, including the day of birth, without protections for infants that have actually survived, thank God, a botched abortion and paid for by taxpayer dollars, paid for by you. If you support that, it tells me everything that I need to know about you. And it certainly tells me that you're not a Christian. Now, you might immediately respond with, and rightfully, hey, Kyle, haven't you seen the things and heard the things that Trump and the campaign have said about abortion? Like, he's signaling that he's going to moderate on the issue. And what I would tell the Trump administration is that this is a big misstep. If they lose, this is going to be one of the reasons that those 30 or 40 million Christians sat on their hands, because you signaled that you wanted to kill more babies. But look, Trump is saying things that I don't like about abortion right now. He certainly is. I think some of the things that he has said out loud are egregious, and I clearly do not support the things that he said. Also, I don't think, and I've said this a bunch on the show, I do not think that Donald Trump is pro-life in his heart. No, I don't think so. But also, I don't care if he's pro-life in his heart. I care how he legislates. Like, let's say I gave you two options. So we'll leave the candidates' names out, but it's candidate 1 and candidate 2. Candidate 1 is fervently and legitimately pro-life in their heart, but they will legislate in a pro-choice, pro-abortion way. Candidate 2 is not pro-life in their heart. They're actually more pro-abortion, but they will legislate in a way that is more pro-life. Which one would you take? Which one would you take? 1 or 2? You have to go with number 2. I don't care what they think in their heart. I care how they legislate. Because here's the reality, guys. Both Trump and Harris are signaling moderation on the abortion issue, right? Signaling it. Well, I guess Harris really isn't. That's like the center point of her campaign. So let me buy that back a little bit. Trump is signaling moderation on the abortion issue. However, it is clear that Harris will 100% legislate radically to the left on the issue of abortion And it is pretty clear, if his first 4 years in office are any indication, that Trump will legislate to the right on the issue of abortion. Like, again, we can't tell the future, but it would be a complete 180 if Kamala Harris got into office and was like, actually, no, we're not going to kill a whole lot of babies. That's actually not very good. Right? I mean, we should pray for that if she gets into office, that she does repent of sin, that she does return to Christ, and that she does legislate in a way that would be honoring to God. But Trump has actually been in office before. And even though I don't think he's actually pro-life, he, in one administration, became the most pro-life and most effective pro-life president in the history of this country. So that's the reality. But as we wind to a close here, I do want to talk about the possibility that Trump loses. Because right now, if I had to guess, a month ago, I'm sitting in Joby Martin's house with his wife and a couple of his neighbors, the cops, and my wife was there and all that. It's funny because their last name is Cop and the guy is actually a cop, but there weren't just a bunch of cops hanging around. So just to be clear, there were 6 of us. Anyway, Joby just asked me in front of everybody, Kyle, what's going to happen in the election? And before he could even finish the sentence, I'm like, Kamala's going to win. Because a month ago, I was like, the polls look terrible for Donald Trump. He was making some bad mistakes. He wasn't performing well. The debate did not go well. This was like the day after the debate when we're having this conversation. I was like, yeah, I think between her, the mainstream media, Trump's mistakes, what the polls look like right now, in any chicanery that might come with the actual casting of ballots, I think that he could lose. Now, where we're at now is Trump is currently, according to the best polls, he's within 1 point nationally, which if he's within 1 point nationally, he wins the election. But also more importantly, he is leading in all the swing states. So he's leading in Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. He's leading in all those things as it pertains to the polling. In Vegas, the Vegas odds, again, they don't like losing money. They have Trump winning as well. So if I had to bet right now and put my life on, I would say that Trump probably wins. But if Trump loses, here are some of the reasons why it would have happened. First is that the Kamala Harris campaign and the mainstream media, but I repeat myself, they will have actually fooled enough people into voting for her. They would have convinced enough people that Donald Trump is actually, orange, Satan, Hitler, some combo of that, and that democracy would potentially end, even though we're a constitutional republic, and that Kamala Harris is a fresh new face, and that she wasn't actually in this administration, and that she's not just Joe Biden, but dumber and female. Like she's not any of those things. She's actually the hope that we need, the change that we need. She is female, half black Obama. Like that is exactly who Kamala Harris is. And so if Trump loses, I think that's going to be part of the reason why, is because they were able to romance people into thinking the exact thing. The second reason would be that there would be ballot box chicanery. Good word, second use of it today. So here's the thing. I don't believe that the 2020 election was decided by voter fraud, but I also believe that there clearly was voter fraud in the benefit of Joe Biden in that election. The reason why I'm saying it didn't decide the election is because the Donald Trump administration or any of their lawyers, they didn't even allege that in court. They certainly didn't prove that in court. I don't care about the documentaries that you have to show me, and I don't care about this Reddit board that proves that this ballot box was dropped, this and that and the other thing. But if it's close, and you're telling me that the Democrats could just drop 10,000 votes for Kamala Harris into one area of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Michigan, which could flip the entire election, that they wouldn't do it? It's possible. They could. And another reason why Donald Trump would potentially lose is that he was on the ballot to begin with. And that's enough for millions of people. Because you guys have clearly probably seen, or you'd probably seen these up to this point, but these man-on-the-street interviews where people have gone to the DNC, to the convention, when they've gone to, these woke, left-wing campuses, or they've just gone to left-wing cities or things like that, and they're just man-on-the-street interviewing people, and they ask people, what is Kamala Harris's greatest accomplishment? And they can't come up with anything. But then they'll ask them, wait, are you voting for Harris or Trump? They're like, oh, Kamala Harris. And they're like, well, why? And they're just kind of, and then they eventually find themselves to the actual answer, which is, well, she's not Trump. I go back to 2020 when a guy that I know that is actually pretty moderate was trying to decide between Trump and Biden. And he goes, Kyle, I just can't have a vote for Donald Trump. A guy like that, I can't have a vote like that on my record. And as dumb as that is, voting for somebody because you just don't like them personally, you wouldn't want to hang out with them, you wouldn't want to have a beer with them, is a really, really, really stupid reason to not vote for somebody and to vote for the other candidate. It's really, really dumb, but guess what? your very, very smart and intelligent and well-informed vote is canceled out by the vote of a moron. And that's the system we're in, guys. And that's the best we could probably do. Now, there are other people that are like, hey, we shouldn't have as many people voting. We should only have people that, can probably spell their own names and, give a basics, pass a 5th grade civics test or something like that, which, maybe there's a good argument for that. But the fact that he's even on the ballot hurts the Republicans because it's already been memory hold that the guy was shot. It's already been memory hold that he was tried to be killed again, and all these things have come down. But remember what I said from the very beginning when I was supporting Ron DeSantis, is that he's not nuclear. Ron DeSantis may not get you excited. He may not make you laugh. Again, the fact that Donald Trump did the greatest maybe troll job of all time by working temporarily at a McDonald's and, serving up fries and doing the checkout counter and the drive-through counter and all that. One of the greatest trolls of all time because Kamala Harris claimed to have worked at McDonald's. There's no evidence that she ever worked at McDonald's. And so Donald Trump worked there for a half hour, and that's a half hour longer than Kamala ever did. All that great. It's great comedy. When he did that roast at the little Catholic dinner thing a couple of weeks ago in New York, man, super great, super funny, brutal jokes, all that. But I'll take a boring guy that gets crap done. Ron DeSantis is kind of a boring guy when you see him on the campaign trail. He's not bombastic in debates, and he's not going to absolutely get you super fired up, but he also doesn't come with any of the foibles and any of the baggage of a guy like Donald Trump. So if he loses, I want y'all to remember we had other options. But I'm going to go back as we wrap up here to the scripture that I shared from the beginning from 1 Peter 1:3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. So guys, what I would say, and as a lot of people have said, is yes, our only ultimate hope is the blood of Christ, but also go vote. And when you do, vote Trump. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. Don't forget to support Primal Beef. If you want to get that, go to primalbeef.com and use our promo code Kyle to get a percentage off of your order. But we are going to do a quick resilience boost at Undaunted.Life. Our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. The only link I've got for you today is a link to our donation page if you want to go to support us. But guys, make sure you get out there and vote. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.